Hey all, this is Graham, and welcome to the third episode of my vlog. I've decided to turn it into a world building thing, so I'm going to, I'm just basically going to go on about my world, which I've developed and am developing, and I've been working on it for about 2-3 years, I think, maybe less, but no, it's only been a year. Anyway, it started with this world, or rather, it started with a map, and I showed you that map last time. Let me find it again. There we go. Here it is in nice big form. A very lovely map designed by me. And I decided that I would make a fantasy world. Well, it's pretty typical for me to make fantasy worlds. I mean, those are my idiom, I guess, would be a good word. Thank you, Monty Python. Anyway, I decided to go the route of your standard fantasy races, you know, humans, elves, dwarves, that sort of thing. And then I decided I'm going to take them and I'm going to twist them. So my dwarves, for instance, most dwarves are mountain folk, big, strong, short, and yet wide. So short and stout and beer drinking, hard foraging, agoraphobic things that have a lot of endurance and a lot of strength, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Agoraphobic, lots of strength, and not much else. My dwarves, on the other hand, are, well, they're still short. I mean, they're dwarves, and dwarf generally, I mean, dwarf even means a short person. So, really, if they're short, then technically they're dwarves. Or there are other terms for other people who are very short. But in fantasy, if they're short and they have, well, okay, short and have beards, then they're dwarves. Unless they're gnomes. Anyway. Do my dwarves have beards? I'm gonna have to look at that again. I think some of them do and some of them don't, and it really sort of depends on more on culture than on your dwarf if you have a beard and a Scottish accent, which I can't do very well. I keep mixing it up with my Irish accent and they end up combining into some sort of strange amalgam, which I don't think is very good. Moving on. Dwarves, in my world, are plains dwellers, and sometimes cave dwellers if they can find caves with flat floors. This is because my dwarves are clumsy. Very clumsy. This only applies when they're walking or otherwise moving their bodies, of course. If they're standing still at a forge, it applies less. Probably because they've learned over the years that bashing your hand off is not a good way to get a mate. So their species has slowly gotten more dexterous in certain aspects, but not in others. Dwarves do still forge stuff, and they have a good reason to. They're very heat resistant and very cold resistant. Some dwarven legends actually speak of a dwarf who made his forge in the caldera of an active volcano. The guy pretty much was guaranteed to have died, but it's not the heat that would have killed him, it's the magma burning him to a crisp. Dwarves do prefer plains simply because they have nice room to sprawl, They can move without fear of tripping over anything except their own 2 feet. And I decided to go a certain route. Dwarves and humans and elves, the 3 races of my setting, can interbreed. So you can have a half-dwarf, you can have a dwarf-elf hybrid, you can have an elf-human hybrid. And those will all breed true with each other and with their ancestor races. Because breeding true with your ancestors is kind of squicky. But anyway, the whole point with my dwarves was to sort of get them out of the caves. Because while you may live in mountains, it's kind of hard to brew a good beer when all you have is rock and whatever plants you can grow in rocky regions. You're better off with a more varied climate, or at least a nice climate like Germany. I mean, German beer is famous, and for good reason. It's good. It's been assured of its quality for hundreds of years, thanks to special beer purity laws that were first passed in the 1600s, I believe. Maybe even earlier. Let's see. What else do I have about dwarves? Yeah, dwarves are, I then basically go into detail about dwarf culture and how it differs between not only different clans, because the dwarves have this whole thing about clan, are you a northern dwarf, a southern dwarf, an eastern dwarf, a western dwarf, and if so, what family are you in? What are your religious leanings? All that. That's a rundown on dwarves. I haven't really worked out all that much with elves yet, but I can safely say that they're not just long-lived humans. Oh, that's another thing. Dwarves and elves don't live comparatively long to humans. Don't live especially long compared to humans. They might have a slightly longer or shorter lifespan. I haven't really decided yet. But it's not anything like the Tolkien-esque immortal elves who don't die. They just go off to the Grey Haven and then take a ride from there to the land of the gods. And it's not like D&D where elves live about 1,000 years and then, they're old immortal elves. And dwarves live about 300. No, you're more likely to find elves, dwarves, and humans living in similar regions. Well, I'll get to that in a later vlog, because elves and dwarves and humans live on the same 5 continents, but not all 3 races live on the same continent. So, more on that later. More on the places I've fleshed out later. And I'll see you later.